Hi, this is part two of a rebuttal on a video that was made by Dawn Exodus. If you haven't seen the first part of it, then you'll be picking up halfway through it, so I suggest you go back and watch the first part. Now, I was about to quote from an email that Professor Koval had sent to Dawn Exodus, and that he had quoted bits of it, but I'm going to quote other bits that he left out. I've been contacted by a variety of individuals wanting to know my reasons for signing the statement. For the most part, these inquiries have been from pro-evolution groups or individuals whose clear intention was to show that my reasons for dissenting from Darwinism were due to a misunderstanding about evolutionary theory or simply from religiously motivated ignorance. And then Professor Koval goes on to say, I'm not bothered by much by these inquiries, but they do make me wonder about their motivation. During my academic career, which began in 1980, I've taught numerous graduate and undergraduate classes, have been the thesis director for 26 PhD and 5 MS students, and have co-authored more than 110 peer-reviewed scientific publications. Yet despite these contributions to science education and to the knowledge basis in my field, primarily electrochemistry and membrane science, many scientists and influential scientific organizations would conclude that I was scientifically incompetent simply because I expressed skepticism for this particular theory. Why is that? Is intelligent design really bad for science? Before returning to this question, I will describe my continued interest in intelligent design and give my reasons for signing a scientific dissent from Darwinism. Professor Koval says, intelligent design is a multifaceted and complex subject, not just a term that people should have a simple for or against opinion about. Regarding my reasons for signing the dissent, let me begin by saying that I did not do so lightly. And then later he continues, the dissent statement does not say that neo-Darwinism is wrong. Rather, it expresses skepticism for the mechanism of evolution and encourages the examination of the evidence supporting the theory. And the problem with this would be? He again continues later, given the recent spate of falsified scientific findings published in top-tier scientific journals, one wonders if there is enough professional skepticism in the scientific community. Still later he continues, my primary criticism of the teaching of evolution can be found in the early chapters in most biology and geology texts regarding chemical evolution. Most present a presumably reasonable scientific explanation of how the first organisms capable of undergoing evolutionary change were generated by non-biological means from simple molecules, minerals, etc. The typical scenarios start with a vague discussion of what was present on the Earth's surface 4 billion years ago. This is followed by a description of the Miller-Urey experiments, in which mixtures of simple molecules like H2O, CH4, NH3, and H2 were subjected to electric discharges resulting in the formation of a number of amino acids and similar compounds. Add a few ill-defined terms like catalyzing substrate or self-organizational principle, and voila! Here is Mr. Cell, all ready to evolve into humans. These chapters also contain enlightening statements such as, how then did life arise? It was guided according to the Darwinian principle of survival of the fittest as it applies at the molecular level. And after the building has been erected, the scaffolding is removed, leaving no physical evidence that it was ever there. Professor Koval goes on to say, I have what I believe is a professionally informed view of chemical evolutionary theories, especially as presented in most undergraduate and K-12 textbooks. These theories are scientific nonsense, and presenting them to students as scientifically plausible is wrong. Furthermore, I believe the manner in which conclusions are drawn in such chapters is relevant to skepticism about neo-Darwinism. If the first chapters of books that supposedly present the scientific evidence for biological evolution are flawed and misleading, is that not a sufficient reason to be skeptical about the rest of the book? Professor Koval also says, dissenting voices in science are extremely important. This is the whole basis for the concept of falsification. Furthermore, it is abundantly clear that unlike any other field of science, scientists and educators in the U.S. who dare to question neo-Darwinism are being persecuted both professionally and legally, And sadly, many Americans and even certain judges are willing to believe the claims of organizations that are conducting witch hunts in the name of science education and protecting the U.S. Constitution. In my opinion, the purpose of these organizations has little to do with education of any kind. They are simply attempting to exclude anyone who is not committed to, or at least submissive, towards metaphysical naturalism and or secular humanism from full and open participation in science. Now, Don Exodus next shows us an email from Dr. Clarence Fausch and says that Dr. Fausch asked him what he meant by common descent. Now, it's obvious that looking at the email that he didn't ask from a lack of understanding, as Don Exodus seems to imply, but he wanted Don Exodus to define what he meant. Now, Dr. Fausch goes on to say that if you mean that we all came from a common ancestor organism, yes, I reject that as being biologically and mathematically improbable. The DNA changes that would be required to produce all organisms on Earth from a common ancestor would be statistically impossible to generate randomly, even over several billion years. Mathematicians have shown this. Now, Don Exodus misquoted Dr. Fausch's email by adding the words, "these nucleic acid sequences," which were nowhere in his email. He showed the email on his video, and those words were nowhere in it, so he's just added those to it. Then Don Exodus concludes his video with some mathematical gymnastics using hypothetical figures to try to sidetrack us from what his video really proved. What it really proved was that no matter how many times Don Exodus misrepresented the wording of the original descent statement, or how many scientists he dismissed as having no relevance on the subject, or how many email responses he misquoted, no matter how he tried to stack the deck in his favor, the final result was that 1 out of every 8 biologists that responded reject evolution. Which, of course, wasn't the point of the descent form anyway. So, in conclusion, the descent list, which started with signatures of 101 scientists in 2001, has now grown to over 750, and there are a great deal more who would like to add their names, but due to fear of an adverse impact on their careers, have not. Thank you.